Turn them off right now, or I'll fine you $500 a day." That was the first thing Karen, our HOA president, screamed at me the night I switched on our Christmas lights. Her voice cut across the cul-de-sac like a siren, echoing off the houses as neighbors peeked out from their windows. My kids, who had been bouncing with excitement just seconds before, froze on the porch beside me. Their smiles faded into confusion as Karen marched down the sidewalk, pointing at our home as though I had just committed a crime. Before I tell you how this turned into one of the most outrageous battles I've ever faced, make sure to like, subscribe, and share, because what started as a joyful holiday tradition quickly became a fight against an HOA that had gone too far. For me, putting up lights wasn't just about decoration. It was tradition. My father did it every year, and now I carry it on for my children. We spent days climbing ladders, stringing colorful bulbs across the roofline, wrapping trees in twinkling strands, and setting up Santa and his sleigh on the front lawn. It wasn't only for us. It was for the whole neighborhood. Families walked by to admire it. Children's faces lit up with joy. Even strangers would slow their cars just to take a look. But Karen hated it. She said the lights were distracting, tacky, and a violation of the HOA's rule on neighborhood uniformity. In her world, every home had to look the same, plain, dull, lifeless. My family's joy didn't fit into her version of control. 2 days later, I found a letter taped to my front door. It wasn't just a warning. It was an official violation notice. The fine, $500 a day until every single light and decoration was removed. Even the wreath on our door was listed. I stood there reading it, stunned. $500 per day. That wasn't enforcement of rules. That was financial warfare. That night, I spread the notice across the kitchen table. My wife read it twice before looking up, her face pale. "What are we going to do? We can't afford this." I shook my head. "We're not taking them down. Not this year, not ever. She can't bully us into giving up something that matters this much." The decision was made. The lights were staying. What I didn't know was how far Karen would go to make me pay. This wasn't about decorations anymore. This was about power. And when the next notice landed on my door, I realized the fight was only beginning. The second notice arrived 3 days later. This one was even harsher than the first. It claimed I now owed $1,500 in unpaid fines and that the amount would keep growing daily until the decorations were gone. At the bottom, in bold letters, was a threat that made my blood boil. Continued violation may result in legal action, including a lien or foreclosure. I crumpled the paper in my fist and tossed it onto the kitchen counter. My kids had spent the night before sipping hot chocolate on the porch, staring at the glowing lights with wide eyes. To them, this was magic. To Karen, it was a crime. Over the next week, Karen escalated her campaign. She started walking the neighborhood with a clipboard, stopping in front of our house at least twice a day. I'd catch her snapping photos of the decorations, muttering to herself. Sometimes she wouldn't even look at me, just smirk, as though she'd already won, and it wasn't just me she was targeting. Neighbors I'd been friendly with for years suddenly grew cold. One man who used to wave every morning stopped making eye contact. Another woman, whose kids had always loved our light display, crossed the street when she saw me. Word was spreading that Karen had told them if they supported me, they could be fined too. She was poisoning the entire neighborhood against us. By mid-December, I had received 5 separate notices. The fines were climbing into the thousands. One letter even claimed Karen had the authority to take me to court personally if I didn't comply. My wife was anxious, losing sleep at night, whispering that maybe we should just give in. But I couldn't do it. Taking those lights down would mean Karen had won. The breaking point came one Friday evening. I stepped outside to adjust a timer on the lights and found yet another envelope taped to the door. This one wasn't a violation. It was an ultimatum. "Remove all decorations within 48 hours, it read. or face immediate legal proceedings initiated by the HOA. I stood there in the cold, the glow of the lights washing over me, my fists clenched. Enough was enough. That night, I made a decision. If Karen wanted a fight, she was going to get one. I started documenting everything. I took photos of her sneaking by with her clipboard. I recorded videos of her yelling on the sidewalk. I even saved every violation notice and typed them into a file, time-stamped and organized. Karen thought she had the upper hand, but what she didn't know was that I was preparing to take this battle beyond her little HOA circle. And when I pressed upload on the first video clip of her screaming about $500 a day fines, I had no idea just how far this story would spread, or how quickly her control over the neighborhood would start to crumble. The first video went live on a Saturday morning. By that evening, it had already racked up thousands of views. People couldn't believe it. An HOA president threatening a family with foreclosure over Christmas lights. The comments section exploded with outrage. Some called Karen a holiday Grinch. Others compared her to a dictator. I scrolled through them late into the night, my phone buzzing non-stop with notifications. For the first time, I felt like maybe we weren't alone in this fight. But Karen wasn't about to back down. The very next day, I caught her standing at the edge of my driveway, phone in hand, taking more pictures. When I stepped outside, she shouted, "You think posting videos will save you? This is private HOA business. I'll sue you for defamation." Her voice was sharp, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of nervousness. She hadn't expected me to fight back publicly. The following week turned into open warfare. Karen sent yet another notice claiming my fines had now crossed $10,000. She left it taped to the garage door this time so every neighbor walking by could see it. She wanted to shame me, to isolate my family even more, and it worked. Some neighbors kept their distance, afraid of getting caught in the crossfire, but others quietly gave me thumbs up or whispered encouragement. Not everyone was ready to stand against her, but cracks were starting to show in her control. Then came the night she truly crossed the line. I was locking up the house when I saw headlights idling near the curb. Karen sat in her car, engine running, camera flashing as she snapped photos of my kids, inflatable Santa and reindeer. I walked straight out into the cold, phone recording in hand. "Karen," I said, "you need to leave right now." She rolled down the window, smirk plastered on her face. "You're finished. Tomorrow I'll be filing for court action. Your family will regret ever trying to defy me." I didn't reply. I just kept recording until she sped off into the night. That video went viral too. Millions of people now saw her sitting in her car, threatening a family over holiday lights. By now, it wasn't just random viewers paying attention. Local media outlets had started calling. Reporters wanted interviews, neighbors wanted to share their own experiences with Karen, and my lawyer, yes, I'd hired one by then, explained that Karen's behavior could be considered harassment. He even pointed out that state law specifically protected holiday displays within a reasonable time frame. In other words, she had no legal ground to stand on. Still, the harassment didn't stop. Karen doubled down, pacing in front of our yard during the day, banging on our mailbox with her clipboard, leaving handwritten notes that read, "Last warning." She was unraveling, and the more I documented it, the more support poured in online. The turning point came one frosty evening when the police were called. Karen claimed my lights were a safety hazard and demanded they be shut off immediately. When the officers arrived, I showed them the notices, the recordings, the videos. They listened patiently, then turned to Karen. One of them said plainly, "Ma'am, holiday decorations are not illegal. This isn't a police matter." Her jaw dropped. She sputtered, But the HOA rules." The officer shook his head. "HOA rules don't override state law. You need to stop harassing this family." The neighbors who had gathered on their lawn started whispering, some even chuckling. For once, Karen didn't have the last word. She stormed off, red-faced, muttering threats under her breath. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table with my wife, we realized the battle was bigger than just us. Karen had ruled with fear for too long, and now the whole neighborhood was seeing her for who she truly was. Still, I had no idea how quickly things were about to escalate, because the very next morning, a white van with a news station logo parked at the end of our street, and Karen's. Meltdown was about to go public in front of the entire city. The news crew showed up early, their van parked at the end of the cul-de-sac with cameras already rolling. I'll never forget the way Karen froze when she spotted them. She had just stepped outside, clutching her clipboard like always, ready to start her morning patrol. But this time there was no hiding. The reporter, a sharp-looking woman in a navy coat, walked right up to my porch. "Ryan, we'd love to hear your side of this," she said, microphone raised. My kids peeked from behind the door as I nodded and agreed. I explained everything, how we decorated every year as a family tradition, how Karen had fined us thousands of dollars, how she even threatened foreclosure. The camera captured every word, every violation notice I held up. Neighbors started stepping out of their homes, curious about the commotion. Some nodded along as I spoke, finally emboldened now that Karen's grip was slipping. But Karen wasn't about to stay silent. She marched right up to the camera crew, her shocking pink outfit blazing against the frosty backdrop. "This is HOA business, not news," she barked. "He's lying. These lights are dangerous and a nuisance. He's disturbing the peace." The reporter didn't flinch. She turned Mike in Karen's face. "Ma'am, are you saying a holiday display is disturbing the peace?" Karen's eyes darted, her mouth twitching as she searched for an answer. It violates community standards. Uniformity is the rule, and he's refusing to comply." But the reporter pressed harder. "So you're fining a family $500 a day over Christmas lights? Do you think that's fair?" Karen's composure cracked. She raised her voice. "Fair? Rules are rules. Without them, this place would fall apart." Her words echoed down the street, but instead of nodding, the neighbors whispered and shook their heads. Then something incredible happened. One by one, houses across the block lit up. Strings of lights flickered on, reds, greens, blues, glowing Santas and snowmen. My wife had quietly rallied our closest neighbors the night before, and they had all decided to decorate in solidarity. Within minutes, the street transformed into a dazzling festival of lights. Karen spun around, her jaw dropping. "No, no, no. You can't do this! You'll all be fined." But nobody listened. Some neighbors laughed. Others just ignored her, adjusting their displays proudly. The cameras caught it all, the dictator of the HOA being drowned out by holiday cheer. The reporter turned back to me. "Looks like the community has spoken," she said with a smile. Karen stomped her foot like a child throwing a tantrum. "This isn't over. I'll take every single one of you to court." But her threats sounded hollow now. The power she had lorded over us was slipping away with every flashing bulb, every cheering neighbor, every camera recording her meltdown. That evening, the news segment aired. It showed my kids sipping cocoa on the porch, the row of glowing houses, and Karen screaming in her pink blazer. By midnight, the story had spread across the state. Social media tore into her. She wasn't the enforcer anymore. She was the Grinch caught on tape. Still, the real blow hadn't landed yet. Because the very next week, the HOA board called an emergency meeting, and Karen's seat at the head of the table was about to vanish. The fallout came faster than even I expected. Within days of the news segment airing, our quiet little neighborhood was suddenly the center of attention. Reporters camped at the entrance, cars slowed to take pictures of the decorated homes, and strangers dropped by just to see the Christmas lights HOA fight they had seen on TV. For years, Karen had operated in the shadows of authority, sending out letters, scribbling fines, whispering threats behind closed doors. But now her face was everywhere. Clips of her screaming into the reporter's microphone spread across Facebook, TikTok, even the evening news. Memes labeled her the holiday HOA Grinch, complete with green skin and a scowl. People who had never even heard of our subdivision were laughing at her meltdown. At first, Karen doubled down. She sent another round of violation letters, this time not just to me, but to every neighbor who had put up lights in solidarity. She taped them directly to mailboxes, stamped in red ink, $500 fine per day. But the letters didn't scare anyone anymore. They only fueled the fire. Several neighbors walked straight to my driveway, waving the papers in disgust. "We're with you, Ryan," one said. "We've had enough of her." The turning point came at the HOA emergency meeting. Normally, those gatherings were dull affairs attended by maybe a handful of residents. But that night, the community center was packed to the walls. Every chair was filled, people stood along the edges, and even local reporters showed up with cameras ready. Karen strode in, her shocking pink dress and blazer crisp as ever, clipboard clutched tightly in her hand. She tried to speak over the murmurs, but the room wasn't hers anymore. A board member cleared his throat and announced that the agenda had been changed. The main topic was now Karen's conduct as HOA president. Karen scoffed, waving her clipboard. "This is ridiculous. He violated rules and I enforced them. That's my job." She pointed directly at me, her finger trembling with rage. "He should be the one on trial here." But the board didn't back her. They had seen the videos. They had watched the news. One by one, residents stood up to speak, not in whispers, not behind closed doors, but out loud, in front of everyone. Mrs. Williams, who had lived there for 30 years, told how Karen fined her $200 for having flower pots that didn't match. A young couple shared how Karen threatened them over their kid's basketball hoop. A veteran neighbor recounted how Karen called his flag unapproved signage. The room buzzed with anger, stories pouring out like water bursting through a dam. For the first time, the community wasn't afraid. They were united. Karen tried to shout them down, but every word only made her look more desperate. "You're all ungrateful. Without me, this neighborhood would be chaos," she yelled, her voice cracking. But nobody believed her anymore. Finally, the board chair, a man who had always seemed to shrink under Karen's control, stood tall and declared, "Effective immediately, Karen Hart is removed as HOA president. A vote will be held to elect new leadership." The room erupted in applause. People clapped, cheered, even whistled. Some hugged each other. Others shouted, "About time!" Karen, red-faced and trembling, slammed her clipboard on the table. "You'll regret this!" she screamed. "You'll all regret this!" Then she stormed out, her heels clicking furiously against the tile, but no one followed. No one cared. Her reign was over. In the days that followed, life in the neighborhood shifted. The fines stopped. The harassment ended. Neighbors who had once avoided me came over with coffee, cookies, even offers to help with my decorations. The block became brighter than ever. Every home lit up with strands of red, green, and gold. It wasn't just about Christmas anymore, it was about freedom. About standing up together against a bully who thought she was untouchable. Christmas Eve came, and for the first time in weeks I felt peace. My kids stood on the lawn with mugs of cocoa, their eyes wide as the lights blinked in rhythm, reflecting off the snow. Families gathered on porches, music played softly, and for once, no one was looking over their shoulder in fear of a clipboard or a fine. I looked around at the glowing street, the smiling faces, the warmth in the cold winter air, and I realized this fight had done more than protect our lights. It had given our community its voice back. Karen's downfall had broken the chains of fear, and in their place was something stronger, unity. As for Karen, rumors swirled. Some said she moved out. Others claimed she was still in the neighborhood, sulking behind drawn curtains. But it didn't matter. She had no power anymore. Her rules, her fines, her threats, they were nothing but scraps of paper in the trash. I stood with my wife that night, the glow of the lights painting her face, and whispered, "We won." She smiled, her hand squeezing mine, and nodded toward the kids, who were laughing with their friends in the yard. "No," she said. "We all won, and she was right. This wasn't just my victory. It was every neighbor who had lived in fear, every family who had paid a fine for nonsense, every child who just wanted to enjoy the holidays. The lights that night weren't just decorations. They were a symbol. A symbol that no HOA president, no matter how power-hungry, could take away the spirit of a community that finally stood together. So if you're watching this and you've ever been pushed around by an HOA, remember this story. Remember what happens when neighbors stop hiding and start standing up. Because sometimes, all it takes is one act of defiance, a strand of lights, a flag, a garden, to spark a movement that no bully can stop. And to everyone out there dealing with your own HOA nightmare, you're not alone. Share your story. Speak up, fight back, because together we're stronger than any rule book. Like, subscribe, share, and tell your HOA nightmare in the comments below. Let's shine a light on every Karen out there until the whole world sees the truth.